All right, and welcome to Mayor's Update.
Hey, look, it's been 2 weeks since we've been on the air. So welcome. Thank you, Grayden. And our great guest tonight, too.
Yes.
We've got Mayor Morgan from London, and it's Mayor's Night on Mayor's Update. So we're pretty anxious. You got questions about London or St. Thomas tonight, you can certainly ask them. We'll do our best to do all we can do, but we've got a lot to talk about.
So many things about inter-municipal cooperation.
Yes,
Well,
it's
regional.
snowing in London, and
Yes.
it's not here.
No.
Yes.
So I'm the only one who's going to get snow plowing questions tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay.
But you can try to answer them.
Oh, no, of
Because you get
course.
those all the time, right?
No, I can. Of course.
Or unless it never snows here.
Very rarely, actually, now.
We'll have to get the snowplow out of the garage. No, I'm just...
Get an escort for the way home.
That's it. Right. Morgan, it's great to have you here, and you and I have been talking for the last couple of years at least about regional cooperation and regional growth in Southern Ontario. We've gathered in a number of other mayors now in Southern Ontario, all saying the same thing, that what goes well for any one of us goes well for all of us, and it's been a great growth period in this term of council.
Oh, I agree. And, I know we both have the same philosophy that there may have been a time where municipal borders were really important. You kind of only thought within that bubble. But in a modern, fast-paced, growing, global economy, if you don't think about your region, then you're missing the picture on economic development, planning, growth, transportation. And so I've really appreciated our collaboration and the leadership that all the mayors in the region have been able to provide for the region together. It's been really great.
Well, and look at the great things that have happened, whether it's regional transportation or working on the healthcare system as a regional entity and looking at the different ways of dealing with that. And certainly in migration, we've both had very fast growing communities in the last 2 to 5 years. And we can handle it. And, someone asked me the other day, where are the vast majority of people who have chosen St. Thomas as a place to live? Where are they coming from? And I said, London. And they said, no, they can't all be. I said, yes, but many come to Southern Ontario, find a spot, and then go take a look around.
Right.
And so I would be certain it would be the same thing in London. Many would have come here first and taken a look and said, I'm going to London.
Yeah.
Right. And so we share the same workforce. We share the same employment force, we share the same healthcare systems, and we share the same roads, and so we have to work together. And in the past, it wasn't always that way. We have to say this works well for all of us.
I completely agree, and you're exactly right. People are coming to our region from all over, but there's a lot of people moving from the GTA and escaping what is a high cost jurisdiction, coming to this region. And you're right. They try to find a place that they can afford, a place they can live, and then they find employment. And that means people are always flowing between our cities and around our region for jobs, entertainment, education, healthcare.
London Nights,
winning hockey team in the area, unlike Toronto, right?
Yeah,
it's a years long season ticket holder. I still have to turn on that every Friday night, so I know where my place is in sports history. And St. Thomas Stars, love you dearly. But you got to watch the Knights when they're playing the way they're playing now.
I don't know anybody in St. Thomas who hasn't seen the London Knights or Elgin County for that matter.
Yeah.
But we're talking workforce development here. We're talking about how the two municipalities are collaborating. Because there are some jobs in London that people from St. Thomas are going for. There's jobs that are in St. Thomas now that people from London are coming for. And you guys have done a lot over the past couple of years to put that all together. Regional transit is one. What are some of the other things that you guys are working towards in terms of that collaboration?
Well, I'll kind of go first. Part of it is we're at the DMA. I forget what they call it now from an employment point of view. It is London and St. Thomas. So when you read unemployment stats, it's both of us. It's us and a bit of Middlesex and a bit of the area around us. So we're working together sometimes even when we don't know we are.
Yeah.
But you just mentioned it, and I think Mayor Morgan mentioned it too. So many people in St. Thomas go to work in London. So many people in London get in their car and drive to St. Thomas or take that bus every day out to St. Thomas. We share workforces because sometimes you don't want to work where you live and live where you work. It's close. It's a regional effort.
Yeah, and when there are major employers who come, whether they're coming to St. Thomas or they're coming to London, I know part of what they look for is that workforce and economic development. What is the workforce capacity? Where is the talent? And our local economic development corporations between our two regions and our two cities work really well together because they don't just want a picture of St. Thomas. They don't just want a picture of London. They want to know where they can draw from a regional perspective. And that makes us both way more competitive for attracting big employers, some of who are coming to North America for the very first time, and they're landing in our region. And that benefits, whether they land in London or they land in St. Thomas, the regional spin-offs from that benefit both of our cities and the surrounding communities.
Well, and I'll agree that our two economic development corporations, with Capil in London and Sean out here, work so well together. Sometimes I wonder who's paying who here. but it is about, because it's a great thing if they work together and attract it for wherever it is in Southern Ontario or in our region. It really does work well. So I've learned to smile a lot about what happens when you're actually good friends and things work well together.
Yeah.
And one of the things you're working on too is with Fanshawe College, because Fanshawe is in London and it's in St. Thomas. And the battery plant, as an example, that's coming in, they're working on a program to help train people to be able to learn to do the tasks that are needed to work there.
Right. And of course, with Western also in London, we need this type of education system to match the workforce development that has to take place. You and I were talking earlier this evening about we're all of a sudden going to need 3,000 employees. And I don't want anybody saying to us, and I think we've mentioned it on the show before, hey, all these people came from out of town and took my job. No, what you didn't do was ready yourself for that job at the same time as they did. And that's what we're trying to do. But it does take great groups like Western and Fanshawe to work together with us on that. And they've been, just so cooperative about talking with us about what's best.
Yeah, and both of them have been really great about growing their programs when they look at the perspective of what are the needs within the local region. And so where do we need to expand seats in a program? Where do we maybe need a program that's smaller? So they're really in tune with working with municipalities and economic development corporations about where the actual skilled training is needed. And both Fanshawe and Western are great at that. And I think, having universities and colleges who want to have multiple campuses, it creates a huge advantage for the students is to have different experiences. And they may start in one campus and they may move to a program in another campus. And it gives them a much wider experience. And I, from my own perspective, yes, I'm the mayor of a very large city in the region, but I grew up in Plimpton Township, right, in a rural area. And I have always seen the value of our rural areas, our small communities, our small cities, and our large urban centers, and how they can work together. Because, agri-food processing, for example, is an incredibly important part of London's industrial strategy. And that means we are fully dependent and integrated with the entire rural community around us and the products that they grow and produce, and the work.
We'd rather keep them here. Don't load them on a train and send them somewhere else. Let's send them to Dr. Oker and make pizzas. Let's the cakery and do the work
chicken,
here. Oh, sure.
Ice cream.
Right.
Absolutely.
We got it all.
And the arts are the same way, because as a person who grew up in rural, Elgin County, and as an artist, my places to go were St. Thomas, like the Arts Center in St. Thomas, the Public Arts Center, and then also the Tax Center that's up on Dundas Street. And it's like without that kind of that urban setting and that ability to kind of go between spaces and be supported there as well, I wouldn't have had the development that I did when I was growing up.
We talked a bit about Fanshawe and Western, and one of the other things we sometimes forget is as students are maturing, they're usually given good intern propositions or co-op propositions in the region. And so the fact that we're here and somebody may be going to Western and might be from Middlesex Center, the job they may get as the trial towards the career they're heading for is in St. Thomas or Elgin. And so we share a lot regionally, and some of it is the growth of employment and skills.
Right on. And so what are you guys working on right now? So for the audience that's watching, what can you tell us that you guys are working on in terms of inter-municipal cooperation right now?
Well, certainly transportation is the one that Mayor Morgan and I have been talking a lot about. It took us a long time to get that London to St. Thomas, Dorchester connection through Middlesex connection. We love the fact that they've done that. We can't afford to move that now. We're regional now. We have to have that. And for years, we had bus between the two cities 25 years ago. And it made a difference for those people without cars. We're back into that generation. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That
Greyhound bus. Horse and buggy.
Yeah. So if you wanted to go anywhere, you had to. Right.
You jump on the bus from the St. Thomas bus terminal. You go into London where the Greyhound station was. You walk to the Via and you take the train into Toronto.
Yeah. So I would say we're working on regional transportation, and it's not just been Joe and I, but we've been chatting with the county of Middlesex and other counties and other mayors of communities, because there are other small regional transit facilities in and out of London. We're very conscious in London as we develop our master mobility plan with the movement of people in and out of our city as well.
Yeah.
So when you think about like the southern terminus of our BRT route, we know that that's an important terminus for people in St. Thomas to access, get into the city, be able to find a spot, and then get up to, say, hospitals or education.
We choose to stop there and take another direction and go. And with the great work you've done on BRT and a lot of construction, and we're trying to do the same thing now with Highbury Street North and the different things we've done, make it easy to get in and out. I'm not doing it so that people can live someplace or go shop someplace we wouldn't naturally go. We're doing it so we work together and we have that full advantage. So transportation certainly is one. We mentioned post-secondary education is another that's become far more regional than it ever was. But the other thing that's really happened over the last 3 or 4 years is housing being regional, in the sense that we have a lot of builders currently building in St. Thomas that were from London, or London, or our developers now spreading out and saying, I'm going to go build in Thames Centre or in London. And I think that our work together on making it easier to be a developer in our communities has made a huge difference.
Yeah, and we recognize like the different things that we can provide as cities and small communities, right? Like we in St. Thomas and London probably more so in the downtown, we can provide a lot of density, right? Like we can put up, well, we now have a new tallest building in the city of London, the Centro building, and that's the first time in 30 years that we've had a new tallest building. So we can be a center for density.
But with a bunch following it. I mean, there's a lot of hype going on right now. And
there's lots of cranes in the sky, and there has been, and people are moving into our downtown core, but we're also seeing density along transit routes in other parts of the city. And we recognize, I think, as urban centers like St. Thomas and London, that we need to provide a really efficient way to grow, that we can utilize our existing services so that we're not creating really high costs for our respective populations or the province and the feds who we depend on for this type of growth and infrastructure funding. But we're very conscious too, from a planning perspective, that there is growth happening in many different forms within the region, and those can create challenges and opportunities for cities like ourselves. So if you see a whole bunch of single family homes being developed in small communities around an urban center, you got to think about, are those people coming into the urban center anyways? And how are they getting there? Do we need more regional transit? What is the draw on resources? Where are they working? And then how do we efficiently flow people back and forth? So that means it's important to grow in the right ways within certain urban centers, but it's important to be conscious of how people are flowing between the small communities around the urban centers as well, and between the urban centers like London and St. Thomas.
And we don't want to forget them. They're our customers and your customers, and people in St. Thomas are your customers, and we know we have people from London coming out here too. But the smaller communities around us that are showing some great growth patterns right now with being able to service so that they can build homes are huge amounts of customers for the businesses in St. Thomas and in London. So there's nothing wrong with the growth if we do it smart so that people can easily move from one to another.
The other thing that we work on that Joe and I specifically have worked very closely on is moving from individual advocacy as individual cities with the provincial and federal governments to a lot of joint advocacy. So we will look at where are we both saying the same thing, where do we both have the same needs, and then let's speak with one voice, or let's speak with a regional voice and bring other mayors in.
Let's bring in a group of 10 if we have to.
And let's have joint delegations with federal and provincial ministers rather than just go it alone. And we can become way more effective. I often think we can scare them when we say, whoa, Southwestern Ontario has gotten together and figured out that they're a pretty important part of the country.
If they're worried about that, but I think they're more joyous about it and saying, look at what's happening in this area.
Well, we draw some attention when we do that, because when you walk into a delegation meeting, you're like, here's 7 mayors from the region, all working together, all on the same issue. The eyes perk up and say, well, how did you guys figure this out? And what are you here to say? And I think we're much more effective that way.
Well, the advocacy piece is, I found one of the largest pieces of being the mayor is you're the face for your community. And sometimes you've got to go tell some other level of government, I help, I need this. And I want to do it because it's not only for me, but it will work for the city of London and Ingersoll and a number of cities around us. So, look, it's about doing the right thing. And I found in my other level of government, that if you can be friendly, you're far more likely to get this stuff done. And so as Mayor Morgan just said, we go there, but we don't go there as 10 separate mayors. We go there as a group of mayors that said, we sat down and talked about this, and it works.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And in terms of like, there's an increasing homelessness population, or homelessness, people that are experiencing homelessness in our area. And the mayors are starting to get together to work on it together, because the reality is, if one person's getting services all in one area and another area is not providing services, then people feel there's haves and have-nots within the municipality. So how have you guys worked together on that?
Well, we certainly by talking about it, by discussing it, by moving forward and saying regionally. I mean, I think the first conversation I ever had about Indwell was with London at the time, saying, "Hey, have you heard of this group? Can we do this? Can we work on this together?" Without Indwell, I don't know where either of us would be. But it's also about, we went from a period of time when it was really siloed. It was really one charity did this and one community service group did this. And we both have come across that since most of those groups now are regional, whether it's the Canadian Mental Health Association or Addictions Ontario, we've now learned we have to all work together. It's and so what I'm saying to a social group or a service group here in St. Thomas, Mayor Morgan's also saying to the same things to the same group in London. And it is that cooperative of working together for them to say, well, we're hearing it more than one place. As a matter of fact, we're hearing it about 8 places. So maybe that's what we should do to help municipalities along.
Yeah, and absolutely on the issue of homelessness, and even I would throw in mental health and addiction.
Absolutely.
Like the issues faced in urban centers are the same in all of them. And so why would we not advocate together? And so there are a number of mechanisms we use. Sometimes it's regional, sometimes it's through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, sometimes it's through the Ontario Big City Mayors. But there are a number of avenues that, even if not everybody's members of that group, we actually would canvass larger groups and then go and try to advocate for.
I know who's in what club,
all of them.
So I don't have to do it myself. I can go to Mayor Morgan and say, hey, when you get to Big City Mayors, say this, right? I'm not a member of that, but we all know who belongs to which advocacy group. We can call them that now.
So you can collaborate on that level.
Yeah.
And we do, right? And this is what I don't think people realize, is that we collaborate a lot behind the scenes, and it's not something that is splashy or is front page news in the paper. Like working together behind the scenes to try to get stuff. But it's the effective way to get things done for your communities, right? And it's an effective way to solve issues, right? The issues and challenges that we face, and even the opportunities we have within Southwestern Ontario, will not be either overcome or seized without proper advocacy and support from the provincial and federal governments in the right ways at the right time.
Absolutely.
It takes 2 other levels of government along with ours, and in some cases a 4th level counting in the counties, right, of making it work.
And you've got other businesses that might tie in. We have a question in terms of the railway. There's always this discussion within Elgin County and St. Thomas about connecting Port Stanley into London via the railway. So the question is, and again, this relates to CN potentially, what discussions have been had in regards to reviving the London and Port Stanley railway?
Well, we've had conversations with CN in the sense of, you cannot isolate this corridor. We may need it. And if we don't need it today, we need it in a decade from a transportation piece. So we need to keep the corridor open and operating. And that's been our conversation with CN. We've been still working on trying to reconnect the old LMPS line that runs to Port Stanley with the CN line.
I love their line where they're like, oh, well, we'll bring in a crane and we'll just lift the car from like the one line over to the other line anytime you need it.
Look, I understand CN has a business to run, and sometimes they think they know best. They do act much like a country rather than a company. But we've been taking that affectionate approach to saying, here's what we'd all like to see. And it's not hard. I mean, one of the first things Mayor Morgan did, looking at a map in my office saying, there's that railway line.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because we've talked about it so often.
So we do talk about it. We recognize it may be one of the best solutions we can come up with in the future.
Because in the interim, like Paul Jenkins, the CEO of our Chamber of Commerce, is talking about putting in a gondola You know, if they can't get the rail line working, they're just going to do a gondola.
Run a gondola. We're having trouble with hydro towers, but we could use them for two things. That would work.
Well, right? one of the things that we've done as a city is, and it was actually Mayor Holder and I, when Mayor Holder was last term, I was deputy mayor. We brought a motion to council to say we want to recognize that London is a regional transportation hub.
Absolutely,
it's a place where people will switch and change modes of transportation to access other parts of the country or even the United States. And so how do we advocate with local mayors in the region to say we need investments in, say, the VIA station in London. We need connections to it so that people can get from there to Toronto or our respective airports.
Growth of the London airport or even
I
St.
love
Thomas
the London
airport. Right. So that, look, sometimes, and I've said this more than once as mayor, it's easier to get to Paris or to get to Toronto sometimes than it is to get from St. Thomas to London.
Yeah.
Right. And we need that first mile or last mile, whichever way we want to
This is like Paris, France.
Yeah, I did mean that. Yeah. Because once you get to the London airport, you can go anywhere.
It's amazing.
Right.
That's right.
And
it's fast.
So we have to, and then truly, if you're sitting here and you live in Port Stanley, or you're sitting here and you live in Sparta or someplace else close, well, wait a second, I've got to get to St. Thomas now, because from St. Thomas, I can now get to London.
Yes.
And from London, I can now get to Paris, France. But, you know, it is the connectability piece that having the London airport this close to us is a special thing for us. And of course, being on the 401 system. Right?
But when we talk about like collaboration as mayors, and it's not just Joe and I, but other mayors, say along the CN or the CP lines, we talk about with the federal minister about passenger rail priority. Right?
Yes,
like the
priority seems to be free.
For some reason, when Europe leaned into building a proper, effective rail network, Canada kind of ignored it for decades.
We didn't do the same thing,
and we never prioritized passenger rail transportation, and so there's this priority for freight, and it makes passenger rail transportation sometimes painful, slow, and not consistent. And so all of us have an interest along those lines, and the small communities around it, and the urban centers who can access it, to advocate together to ensure that yes, we recognize economic rail freight is really important to the country, but so is the movement of people between regions and communities from a passenger rail perspective. And people will not rely on that service if it's not reliable, consistent, and doesn't take forever to get from point A to point B.
Once they abandon it, they're not going back as quickly. Right?
Yeah, and it'll depend on the type of person you're having on there and is willing to pay for the rates. Because as a professional, if I'm going to Toronto, if I'm going to take the train, I need to know that I can get to my job on time. Yeah. And you can't necessarily go in a day before and get a hotel room and pay for it. Yeah. So the odds are now, because of the issue where like they'll sidecar you, like the sideline with the train, I'll just drive in because I know that I'll get there. Yeah. Even though I'd rather take the train.
You're forcing yourself to do so because you have to be there for a certain period.
But it didn't used to be like that.
The number of times I drive to Aldershot and get on the GO train.
100%. Aldershot is amazing.
Yeah, they got free parking, right?
Right? So no, it's great. Yeah. But yeah, go back to like the London airport. Like that's another one. You can, coming back, like, so I grew up here, I left, and then I came back. And one of the reasons I could come back is because there's a London airport. Right. Yeah. So I can go into the London airport, I can fly to wherever I need to shoot, and then I can come back.
I walk out of the London airport in about 15 seconds and go to my car and leave. It's not like, I mean, Pearson and me have this love-hate relationship. They must be the love because I hate. But I find using London airport is just so much more efficient in that way. If I can connect anywhere, that's work.
But this is where joint advocacy becomes important because if you rely on and use London airport, and we want more direct connections, say from London to Ottawa, instead of going through the Pearson hub spoke, and you want to advocate to Air Canada or you want to advocate to the federal government, me doing that is okay.
Well, it sounds self-serving if you're doing it, but
me doing that with a bunch of other mayors who benefit from the region and start advocating together, we speak with a louder voice. And so it's incredibly important for us to collaborate and work together rather than see ourselves in competition.
So that London is also a regional airport, not just somewhere to go far, far away. And so, it is just, we've got so much good stuff around us. We'll take it.
Well, I met Karen Vecchio, who was our MP at the London airport, because she was on Monday. She was flying to Ottawa.
Yeah. Right. You know, probably through Pearson, because there isn't as many Ottawa flights as there used to be in my day.
That's what we need to advocate for.
That's exactly what was happening.
Ottawa flights a day back and forth, because I would rather spend an hour on that plane from Ottawa than 3 hours sitting at a bench in Pearson on the way home. It just didn't make sense to do so.
Yeah, no, totally. So in terms of regional cooperation between yourselves, we're talking about transportation, we're talking about workforce development. We're coming to the end of our show here. Is there anything else we should talk about before we wrap up?
Well, I think the MTO, and we talked about transportation, but we have to talk about transportation from a highway system point of view also. And that brings into play the fact that we're both within an hour of an international border where a lot of trade takes place.
Yes.
And so we both think of it both from an economic gateway, both the border system into the United States, as much as a tourism piece too. So we have to keep advocating that. It's not in my community, it's not in Mayor Morgan's community, but it's in our region. And if we can keep the industrial growth happening here because we're an hour away or 2 hours away from an international border, that makes a huge difference. Some concern with the latest happenings in the United States. I know that they want our products and we want to sell them to them.
Well,
so I think it'll work.
I think this is exactly it. And so as there is international tension on the trade side of things, and as there are policies being considered that we know will impact the Canadian economy, which means the London and St. Thomas economy, mayors and cities cannot be silent. We need to join in with the Team Ontario or Team Canada approach, ensure that the needs of our regions are heard, ensure that the businesses in these regions who have dependencies upon the flow of goods across those borders are heard, and we can advocate as a collective with our provincial federal partners effectively. And so I think this is something that's on the horizon for Joe and I to work on, and other regional mayors.
Coming up pretty soon, it looks like we're going to have to play a big role in talking to our counterparts in the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, there's people in Ohio that want the products made here in St. Thomas. We got to make sure they can get them.
Well, there's already a dependency, and there's already existing supply chain connections between places in Michigan, Ohio.
Don't muck with what's working.
Exactly.
Let's talk about how we can work better together rather than what the barriers might be. So, but we can do it. That was, I didn't share with you yet. There was a reach out from the federal embassy from Erie, Pennsylvania, who's just really across Lake Erie from us, said, we'd like to make friends with St. Thomas. We know we're not far from each other. I said, let's get together. Sounds like a mayor's update show.
I would love that. Now, wasn't there where was it we were going to do the high-speed boat from like Port Stanley to
Erie or to Cleveland? Boats, There used to be ferries across that lake that traveled mostly with rail freight. And it certainly could return. The harbors aren't as good as they maybe used to be, but they easily could come back if that was. But especially during COVID and after 9/11, when the borders were closed, we're having some trouble. It would have been a far better system to have another alternative. And so certainly let's look at it. We live near this really large body of water that is navigable.
Absolutely.
We could be doing that too.
Yeah. And so you guys you've just dealt with your budgets for this past year, and you've come out with tax rates. Do you guys ever talk about, like, Joe, do you ever call Mayor Preston, do you ever call Mayor Morgan and say, hey, we're doing, this is our rate. What's your rate? How do you talk about that before?
We have those types of friendly conversations also. Yes, we do. And the first start of this term, Mayor Morgan and I were calling each other once a month at least and made sure it was happening. When Sandra left here and went to work in London, we knew we had a bit of a connection. And so we've left.
She was
that.
in
I
London,
still call her.
left, went to a few places, landed in
returned. Oh man, it's still an open wound for all of us. I think a little bit.
I've got a great new city manager starting, and I just did the same thing to Southwold, and so I understand, right? We get it. We let people grow and share the great growth. But that was, so we do talk a lot about, and sometimes it's gamemanship, it's like, hey, did you notice this happened or this happened, right? Of course it is. We have, and when we get together at AMO or at FCM, I mean, of course we're talking now countrywide, right? Well, I see what your area is doing. Yeah, now it becomes a regional thing.
So do you ever talk down your like CEOs or CAOs? Like, oh no, you wouldn't want them. Like,
Look, I still enjoy my comedy, and I have a lot of pranks. So
no,
no, it's look. it's about being friends first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the growth comes because we're friends. Really, what I see from my time here, first as the MP and now as the mayor here, there was a lot of time when we weren't even talking to each other.
Yeah.
It just wasn't thought it was supposed to happen. And now that it's happening, it's just so much better for all of us.
One of the other things that mayors and Joe and I do is because we have a close relationship is there's only there's a peer group, right? There's only so many mayors in the country, and there are issues we face and there are frustrations that can happen in the job where it is nice to be able to pick up the phone and talk to someone who gets it and then brainstorm a little bit together.
How are you dealing with this?
Right,
right?
Exactly.
And and oftentimes there's a little bit of a good idea on both sides of that phone call.
Exactly.
And it really makes it, and I'll steal it, and I know Mayor Morgan could steal it too. These are good ideas. Take them.
I can tell you, I did my State of the City speech once, and Cam Guthrie from Guelph was sitting in the front row, and he got up after the speech, and he said, "That idea you announced," he's like, I'm using that in my State of the City speech. And then he used it. And then somehow the province gave him credit for coming up with this idea. And I was like, he got that from my speech, right?
That's amazing.
So we make fun like that.
Smile, but you're right. Well, it was a good thing. Great.
But we actually celebrate the sharing of and spreading of those ideas, and we borrow from each other all the time, right?
What I love is it's nonpartisan. Like in municipal politics, it's just you're there for your people, and that's it.
I wear a St. Thomas shirt. No, there's no doubt about this, but it's not to say anybody else isn't helping St. Thomas. I mean, I look at the industries that Capil has brought to London and what the council in London is doing and say, yes, a whole pile of people from St. Thomas are working there.
Yeah.
They're paying the bills here.
Yeah.
Great. We can't be jealous. We have to be helpful. We have to say, way to go. Can I get some more of that?
Absolutely. Well, and you know what? If someone's paying property taxes here and they're working in London, they're supporting London businesses and they're paying taxes. Like you can stop the point at any line, but we are a regionally integrated economy, and we benefit from anybody who lives in the region, and we benefit from there are opportunities and good jobs in the entire region.
Yes. Okay. That was one of the things. Thank you for reminding me, because we're talking to a fellow from Dutton Dunwich who's Henry Dryfout, who's the chair of their EDC committee, and he was talking about how they're working towards developing their community and getting it done. And part of their program is to have that be a hub for people to come and stay and live there, but then they can connect into London and they can fly out.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't thinking about those connections, but because of London, you can live in Dutton Dunwich and have that same style of life that you were having in Toronto with all the extra amenities.
Or a way better style of life than you would have many other places.
Yeah.
We got to quit criticizing that a rural life is a good life too, provided you can get to the services you need, whether it's healthcare nearby or good education nearby or good jobs nearby or high-speed internet nearby.
I love high-speed internet.
We can all work from home. And I think we found that in the first migration from the GTA into Southern Ontario was based a lot on the fact that we had some high-speed internet here, and you could come and stay.
And it's actually why mayors from urban centers like Joe and myself and others advocate for broadband in rural communities, right? It benefits all of us, right? When we ensure that people are well connected in all parts of the province and the region.
Yeah,
it's huge.
So that conversation takes place, and you're right. There might be a weird look. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I said, it's okay for us to help others who need the same help as we needed.
Yes.
Right. And we're finding how great it was. So why don't we give it to them too? Why don't we help them get it too? Whether it's more rail traffic, better highways, high-speed internet, it's all for all of our use, and it betters our life.
Yeah. And there's so many professionals that once they have that, they can work anywhere as long as it's reliable.
Right.
Well, I'll give you an example. I know someone who is a counselor, does counseling for individuals who need to talk to someone, and always encourage people to do that. I've done that myself many times in the past, who works in London, lives in a rural community. And when the snow is really bad, because she actually has access to good internet, can flip to digital, still serve the people who have a need, even if she can't drive in. So rural broadband and good internet connectivity allows that person who may traditionally work in the city, live elsewhere, to still provide people within the city a great service when they need it without having to wait because of weather.
We can't get anywhere else because these are the professionals that have come to our region, and we need to continue to attract even more of the professionals, whether they're counselors or engineers or whatever else they might be.
Right.
Right. So, but we make their life easier here.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked a lot, certainly about PowerCo and Volkswagen, that this is generational, keeping our youth here and not making them have to go somewhere else to either go to school or for a job. We've now created this generational change in Southern Ontario where kids can stay home. Right. I mean, you grew up in a real rural community, and I was born in Chatham, and it was harder. It was harder to find that lifetime career or that education system that you wanted. And we've now made it because of our growth. Sometimes it's just because of broadband, you can do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're a bit over time here, but we really appreciate Mayor Morgan for taking the time to come down from London to join us here on the podcast.
It's my pleasure.
Mayor Preston every week.
This has been great. We need to do this a couple times a year.
I think that'd be fantastic if we could convince Mayor Morgan to come back.
Yeah.
Do a satellite episode from
we can
City Hall in London.
I would love that. If you would allow us to come up to London and
come on up.
cause some havoc up there.
On the road every so often.
Let's go on a road.
Yeah. What people don't see is all the other gear that's kind of like spread around here. So as long as I can create the chaos that I create here, then
absolutely can.
Sure.
Absolutely.
He comes and fills the mayor's office worth of electronic gadgets that we don't touch. No, don't touch that.
Don't.
Yeah, the number of times we're not allowed to touch something today.
No.
But you guys are
it's a lot like the rest of the stuff in the mayor's office. Did you move that paper? Yes, I did.
Oh, well, thanks again, guys.
You.
Thanks to all our viewers, our sponsors, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday.